Hi everyone, I'm Caitlin and I'm the Curator and Exhibitions Manager at JamFactory. I'd just like to start with an acknowledgement to country. I would like to acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the lands and waters of the Adelaide region on which we meet today. I pay respect to their elders, both past and present, and we acknowledge and respect the Kaurna people's cultural, spiritual, physical and emotional connection with their land, waters and community. Here today with us is Adrian Potter. Adrian Potter is an Adelaide-based conceptual artist and product designer. He is also recognised for his public art, examples of which are seen in and around Adelaide. Adrian works in the borderlands of craft, design, sculpture and conceptual art, creating work that defies rigid categorization. This raises questions about what furniture and works of art can be. If you'd like to join me in welcoming Adrian.
Thank you. Welcome. Hi everyone. I'm going to show you a body of works called Water that was exhibited in 2005 through about 2010. And if we get through all that, I'll show you some work related to tattoos and graffiti that came after that. Thanks all for coming. This piece is called A Certain Maritime Affair and it was made in 2005, and this piece is important to me. It's sort of like the piece, everything that went before this work and everything after were totally different. The work is a response to the disaster of the Civex. Does anyone remember what the Civex is? Has anyone heard of it? No hands? Civex? There's one person. The Civex was a small fishing boat that sank off the coast of Indonesia in 2001. And it carried on it refugees from Iraq and Middle East. And there was 397 people on board and 353 people drowned. It was on its way to Australia. Australia knew it was coming and they didn't do anything about it. The 2001 federal election was fought over the Civex and the Tampa. Has anyone heard of the Tampa? A couple of hands, yeah. This piece is a response to that incident and the fact that my ancestors came on boats. And probably most of your ancestors came on boats. Refugees that come on boats are the devil, and most of them come on aeroplanes anyway. The little boat that you see there is the Endeavour, Captain Cook's ship. 3 masts are the crosses that commemorate all the people that died coming to Australia over the waters. The form of it is very classical and very colonial. It's made in traditional colonial timbers from Australia, Australian red cedar, ebony, etc. There's a detail in the next shot there. And I'm going to close this show just for a second and play a little video of it working. So that's the Certain Maritime Affair. If we go here. This image here shows the Civ N. Civ means suspected illegal entry vessel, okay? This one on the right is the Civ N, which is the Children Overboard boat. Does anyone remember Children Overboard? Okay, so who on their right minds would throw their children overboard? Nobody, but unless you're a devil or non-human. So you can see how the way the refugees were positioned in our cultural zeitgeist, and my reaction to that was one of anger. On the left, we see some white people coming across the gangplank on boats and very welcome. In fact, subsidised to come here. And we're going. Is it all right? I've got some making shots too, just to show the complexity of these works, and because it interests me. There's the mechanism for the way the little slats of wood go up and down to make the waves, and you can see the boat there. So there's a chain, cams, there's a close-up of that, and there, if I just go back one, that cog that you see there in the right lower meshes with, don't have a pointer, there's a little cog where the handle connects up there in the top right. This piece called Parched, it's a drinks cabinet. So remember, this is a whole body of work entitled Water. All the pieces that I'm going to show you here are about water, and the information that I wrote way back in the day on this piece, which was also made in 2005, is our land could do with a good long drink. Obviously, the front of it's cracked mud, and the sides of the piece are made by steam bending, which uses water, which there's a detail of the piece there, and cracked mud. There's a series of 3 works related to the Tasmanian dams. This is the first one that was made, and it's called the Real Gordon Dam. Has anyone heard of the Gordon Dam? Yeah, the Gordon Dam was built in southwest Tasmania, and it was a hydro scheme, so it was built to generate electricity. And Peter, you'll know when, 1980s, 1970s? Yeah, 70s. There was a lot of protest against the Gordon Dam when it was being built, because it was going to dam wilderness. It was built anyway, but the subsequent dam, the Franklin River Dam, was stopped. And in the 1980s, if anyone here is old enough, and I certainly am, there was the birth of what's now called the Green Party came from the fight against the dams. The outline you see there is the outline of the gorge that the dam made. The chest of drawers is a bowed front, and in a sec we'll see a photo of the dam that you can see. Hue and pine, blackwood, lots of other Tasmanian timbers are in this piece. And on the right you can see the Gordon Dam there, and on the left you can see a lake called Lake Petter that was dammed, flooded and submerged when that dam was built. That dam is so gorgeous, isn't it? It's such a beautiful engineering structure. And the wilderness on the left is also gorgeous too. This piece is called Lake Petter, and it's an image of the lake from above. There's a detail of that. Feel free to ask questions if I'm going too fast, whatever. This is called Two Wild Rivers, and it's the third in the series of these 3 southwest Tasmanian pieces. The river on the left, or at least the black line, the wiggly black line on the left is the Franklin River, and the one that's on the right is the Gordon River. And remember, the Gordon Dam is the one that dammed the Gordon River. The Franklin River was the one where people stopped it. I wrote something back in 2005 that explains why these pieces are so important. The Gordon below Strathgordon Dam holds the waters of the Gordon River in southwest Tasmania and is used to generate electricity. It's a truly beautiful engineering structure. Lake Petter was a truly beautiful natural wonder and was lost in the flood when the dam was built. The battle to stop the Gordon Dam was unsuccessful, but people kept fighting, and the planned Franklin River Dam has not been built and probably never will be. I see the Gordon Dam and the loss of Lake Pedder as a symbol for a profound turning point in the way white Australians feel about their land. Australians chose to value nature above economic development and progress with the halting of the Franklin River Dam. The political and not the geographical landscape was changed. There's a detail of two wild rivers, and here's a photograph of the Franklin River in all its glory, taken by Peter Dombrovskis. Here's me making the Two Wild Rivers piece using a machine called a scroll saw, and then carving the contours of the map. That work is all off the tool. It's carved, but it's not sanded. As you see there. There's a vertical view before it gets glued onto the carcass, and that's a map that I used to make the image. How are we going? Is it all right? This piece is called High Water Table. It's got an image, an aerial image of the Murray River near Waikerie. The Waikeree's actually bottom centre on the left of that U shape there. It's made with river red gum from the Murray River, and it's stained glass to get the colours, and the white is salt. And that's the aerial view that I used to make that work. Just a bit squished and distorted. Okay, that's the series of works called Water. There are others. Maybe we'll get to it at the end, but I'm going to go on to tattoos now. This one is called mukul. And mukul is about New Zealand facial tattoos, which the warriors of Maori wore to show their lineage. So all of these swirls and cirlicues would tell the warriors' enemies what tribe they came from, who their mother was, what their grandmother did for a living, their grandfather. And it was all carved and tattooed into their faces. Captain Cook brought tattoos back to the West when he visited Tahiti. Here's another image of mukul. This piece was made in 2005. The next image is the second king of the Maoris. I'm going to try and pronounce the guy's name. Tafao. No, I'm not even going to be able to. This guy was born in 1822 and died in 1894. You can see his mukul, and you can also see that it's actually carved into his face. Can you see the carving on the bottom, particularly on his cheek at the bottom there? Has anyone got a tattoo? Painful? A little bit, maybe? Imagine how painful that would be. This guy is a guy from the Marshall Islands. In fact, it's one particular island. I don't have it in here. I would say 1820, this would have been done, and it would have been carved into his skin as well. This is like where tattoos came from. And it would have been telling people exactly who this guy is, where he comes from, who his mother was, who his father was. And it's not just decoration, it's actually a story. It's his story. This is a work by Matthew Harding, who's sadly no longer with us, that mukul was inspired by. And I've got to say, I'm just going to go back to mine, have a look at that one for a sec. This was made well before mine was. There's mine. Matthew Harding's work just kills mine totally. And I miss that guy. This is a piece called Spring Blossom Tattoo. It's made in collaboration with a tattooist called Amy Duncan, who's back in Adelaide now. She really does amazing tattoos. If you need to have a tattoo done, you feel like it, go and get Amy Duncan to give you a drawing and a quote. We did this together in 2008. And the shell is hue and pine. It's a conch shell. There's another image. I did the carving. Amy did the tattoo decoration, like it's actually tattooed onto the timber and then painted afterwards. It was for something Craft South, which is now called Guildhouse, did called Trades, which was linking artists with tradespeople and seeing what came out of that. In this case, I could have been the artist or the tradesperson, or Amy could have been the artist or the tradesperson, remembering that tattooists do an apprenticeship. In this case, I'd probably say I was the tradesperson. There's the shell. And another view. Here's a making image. And this is a concept image that Amy drew before we actually did the work. Didn't do that. Do you reckon we should have? I don't think we had the guts. I can't remember why we didn't do that. This is a piece called Street Cred. And it was for the Credenza exhibition that the JamFactory put on in 2010. The street cred, the cred part comes from the credenza idea, and it's using graffiti, not so much tattoos, but there's a little bit of influence in that, but carved and using marquetry. Marquetry is using timber veneers to make a pattern or a design. In this case, it's blackwood, ebony, which is the black, and hue and pine, blackwood, ebony, hue and pine. And you may not be able to read it, but the writing along the front there is street cred. You can kind of make it out. And also on the top, that also says street cred, but really, what's the right word? Stylised. That's the inspiration, which is a graffiti style called wild style. The carcass was also influenced by architecture because graffiti goes on walls, and the architect in particular was Louis Sullivan, who was a Chicago architect in the 1910s, 1880s, 1910s. This is some of his work. And there's another piece by Louis Sullivan. And here's a definition of street cred. Street cred is like the credibility you can have if you're not so good. And I don't score any points in street cred, and I pretty much score all the points, the negative points in street cred. So I reckon I've got negative 3,000 or something. This is a piece called Tattooed Chest. It's clearly a chest of drawers, and its inspiration is from Japanese tattooing. The koi, or the carp, is the fish there, which has a lot of symbolism in Japanese culture. And the flowers, the peonies also do as well. There's a detail. This is the second tattooed chest. Ebony, all sorts of timbers to get the marquetry in inlay. There's a detail of the second one. You can see what that is. And there's the style of tattooing that is typically Japanese. You can see the koi on this body and also the really dark one. This Japanese tattooing is not carved into the skin like the Maori or the Polynesian tattoos, but it was done with extremely painful methods. This piece is called Frida de los Muertos, and it's Frida Kahlo on the front there, with Aztec architecture inspiring the table. There's a detail. Here's Frida Kahlo. The earring you see there was given to her by Picasso, and I'll just drop back. You can see in the middle of her forehead that earring, and you can see why it's in the middle of her forehead. This is also sort of tattoo inspired. The Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos, in the 1st of November and 2nd of November every year is a celebration where the Mexicans celebrate their dead, and all of their dead and ghosts come down and have a party. Kids are given these sugar skulls to eat. And those sugar skulls have been incorporated into tattoos. You probably won't find this terribly surprising to see, like this is a fairly common sort of a tattoo style. And Frida Kahlo being a Mexican painter, and I'm not even going to ask if you haven't heard of Frida Kahlo because you have to have. This is clearly Frida Kahlo in the sugar skull style as a tattoo. I've got 5 minutes left. This piece is kind of predating the tattoo, but I kind of got it in here. It's called Neds Chair, and it's Ned Kelly's helmet with another chair called the Macquarie chair as a kind of an overlay. The upholstery is kangaroo fur. There's another view of it. Here's Ned's helmet, and I've got to say, if anyone made a sculpture that good, you'd be killing it. Like, that is so good as a piece of sculpture. That's the Macquarie chair, made in 1820 for Governor Macquarie and made by convicts. I'm going to read you what I wrote about that because Ned Kelly was an iconic figure in Australian history, and the aesthetic legacy of his armour remains powerful and compelling. His personal story and the mythology surrounding it have no equal in white Australian folklore. Was he a thief and murderer, or a man fighting for justice against unfair colonial authority? Governor Macquarie was New South Wales' last autocratic governor. I won't give you the dates there. And it is said that he served as an enlightened despot. An inscription on his tomb in Scotland describes him as the father of Australia. At a superficial level, Macquarie and Kelly could be thought of as polar opposites, but I can imagine Kelly and Macquarie negotiating over tea at the governor's residence. Both men are seen as heroes or villains, depending on your point of view. This is a very important chair. It has a brother and sister. There's only 2 of them, and they're in the Powerhouse Museum and the Library of New South Wales. This piece is called Punk, and this is where I'm going to end it today. It's Godzilla, and she's pretty angry. It's all Australian eucalypts, and all of these timbers came from a collection from the CSIRO called the Dedswell Collection, which was the collection of timber in Australia, and it was decommissioned because we didn't need it anymore. So they had these piles of wood in the ANU Forestry car park. So all these timbers, there's 9 eucalypts here, and they all came from South Australia as part of that collection. Thanks. That's it.